We certainly live in exciting times. Even if you ignore the barrage of headlines that would have been considered once-in-a-generation events just a few years ago, we are still living through perhaps the most intense period of technological and societal change in human history. On a more personal level, we are working jobs that didn't exist a generation ago, making a career in ways that may or may not even be legal, and living lives that are going to look considerably different from our parents, for better or worse. Amongst all of this, excitement, it has become very easy to chase new trends, fall into increasingly easy financial traps, and adopt a rather nihilistic view that maybe all of these changes aren't leading us in the right direction. But you already knew all that. What all of this has shown, though, is the hidden brilliance of boring. Boring jobs, boring investments, boring decisions, and maybe even a boring lifestyle have gone from an unfortunate burden to a coveted luxury that even the richest people in the world are embracing. Or at least, they are pretending to.
You're pretty low-key in terms of when we think about billionaires. You don't drive a Lambo?
No, I do not.
That is Sam's Toyota Corolla in the parking lot of FTX headquarters in the Bahamas.
My name is Cami, and I'm 38 years old, and I quit my nursing job to open up a laundromat in Arizona. My business brought in around $475,000 in 2024.
Do any of your billionaire friends ever joke with you about the Cadillac and that you're driving and not something flashier?
We had 2,755 people on the Forbes billionaires list this year.
This is the McDonald's I go to frequently.
So what do you have at McDonald's?
Probably 3 times out of 4 I get a sausage muffin, but then at lunchtime I get quarter pounder and try.
Billionaires are not like you or me, but it's really important for them that you think they are. So important, in fact, that some of them are now spending millions of dollars every year for PR agencies to spread the message that they are just regular people that drive regular cars, eat at regular restaurants, and live in regular homes. But in the age of flex culture, why the f are these people trying so hard to look normal? The now convicted fraudster Sam Bankman-Fried once had billions of dollars of customer funds at his disposal to live a lavish life in the Bahamas. In the early days of FTX, Fried and his co-conspirators reportedly drove around in the expensive sports cars typical of crypto bros. According to evidence presented during his trial, SBF would later sell the cars and advise other executives at FTX and Alameda to do the same because it didn't fit with the image of the company that they were trying to present to customers and investors. SBF's shitty Toyota Corolla that paid influencers made such a big deal of was about as authentic as the company's internal accounting department. The car, the haircut, the wrinkled haircut were more carefully managed than customer funds. The group did this because they knew that the image of a boy genius that didn't care about luxuries or power would be appealing to people looking for an honest place to keep their funds. SBF and the rest of the gang were all frauds, but putting a lot of effort into crafting a folksy image is done by most prominent business leaders for 3 simple reasons that are mostly bullshit. If you know these strategies, you will be able to see through what is little more than personal marketing. The first reason that they do this is because even if they aren't running a fraud, acting like an everyman still gets people to give them what they want. Stealth wealth is when rich people buy products that are of high quality but does not flaunt their wealth. They do this because they don't want the attention and problems that come along with people knowing that they are rich. Billionaires doing a Bloomberg or NAS daily interviews featuring their basic car and geeky wardrobe is not the same thing as stealth wealth. Instead of hiding their financial means, these people are just trying to show off as loudly as possible that they don't care about their money, or that their money hasn't changed them. It's not stealth wealth, so let's call it poverty peacocking, and it's a great move for their personal brand and any companies they represent. Humble CEOs are the new fashion. The world's biggest companies are run by men who wear hoodies and turtlenecks instead of tailored suits, and other business leaders are trying to emulate that trend because investors like it. If business leaders very publicly give up flashy luxuries, it also sends the message that they will be frugal running their business, and the data actually backs this up.
What role has luck played in your success?
Well, there's luck enters into everybody's life.
According to a study conducted by the National Bureau of Economic Research, in 2012, CEOs and CFOs who were not frugal in their own spending were more likely to have instances of insiders perpetuating fraud and were more likely to push equity-based incentives to increase their own income. The study separated personally frugal and flashy executives by looking for purchases like a personal car that was worth over $75,000 or a boat that was over 25 feet. Billionaires and executives didn't actually want to give up their luxuries, so they just started lying about it. Buffett does own an old beat-up car, but he is usually driven around in a fleet of Suburbans with a security team. Zuckerberg wears the same gray shirt every day, but they are custom-made by Brunello Cucinelli. Musk does rent a tiny home next to the SpaceX factory. But the Wall Street Journal pointed out that he spends most of his time in an 8,000 square foot, $12 million mansion, and all of these men fly private. They are welcome to these luxuries. It is their money. But there are still 2 more reasons why they try so hard to pretend that they don't exist. So it's time to learn how money works to find out why billionaires spend millions to try and convince us that they spend nothing. This week's video is sponsored by Monarch Money, which has basically become my go-to place for keeping track of my finances. Monarch is private and ad-free, syncs with over 13,000 banks, credit cards, and investing accounts, and pulls everything into one clean dashboard. No ads, no data selling, you're the customer, not the product. In Monarch, I can see my spending, net worth, debt payoff, recurring bills, and even my credit score all in one place. The budgeting setup is flexible, with simple rules and categories that keep things organized without feeling strict. And the insights help explain what is actually changing month to month. I use it during my monthly budget check-ins, and having everything synced into one view makes things feel way calmer and less overwhelming. I can get the full picture with a quick glance instead of bouncing between apps. If you share money with a partner, Monarch has a shared view so you're both looking into the same goals, bills, and overall financial picture. If you want your finances to feel more clear and under control, check out Monarch using the QR code on screen and use code HMWU50 for a discount. The second reason that really rich people go above and beyond to look normal is because it is an effective sales tactic. If you make millions or even billions of dollars in your life, I have good news for you. Unless you made your money as the founder and CEO of a household name company, or you are a celebrity, it's really easy for you to live a life where nobody knows who you are apart from your family, close friends, and the people that work for you. According to Forbes, there are 2,640 billionaires on Earth in 2023, down from 2,668 in 2022. The publication also admits that many billionaires are not included in this number because they could not collect data to accurately report their private fortunes. Even if you are really interested in personal wealth, you would probably know 50 of these people at most, and the rest just look like people in suits. The point is that every other rich person you know about is only known about because they want to be. And why would they give up an easy life to enjoy their wealth in peace? It's because their own success is one of the best ways to sell stuff. Whether it's Musk promising that full self-driving is just around the corner, Trump slapping his brand name on everything, or Kevin O'Leary role-playing as a businessman to pitch FTX, people buy success. People also buy relatability, so the clever billionaires that want to use their image to boost their own company will make sure that people can see them living lives that people can relate to, and aspire to at the same time. The New York Post recently ran an article about Warren Buffett's wife, who was supposedly overheard complaining about how expensive a $4 cup of coffee was at the annual Allen & Company Sun Valley Conference, which is nicknamed the summer camp for billionaires. This story is also picked up by publications like Business Insider that ran it with the title, "Warren Buffett just became even more relatable for a billionaire." If it wasn't obvious, let me ruin the fun for you. Nobody at this conference would have passed along this kind of personal conversation to the press. You are reading about it because they want you to read about it. Buffett's frugality is credited in his investment company's success, so he is selling an image just as much as Trump is with his steaks and O'Leary is with his wacky pants. For Buffett, this is a better story than a bunch of billionaires getting together to talk in private about, well, who the f knows? The only information that seems to leak from these events is how expensive the coffee is. Being relatable is an equally important sales tactic to people who want to sell a get-rich-quick course. An important element of any grift like this is that people need to believe that someone has become wealthy, and that they can do it too. So grifters will often talk about their humble beginnings while standing in front of a rented Lamborghini. This creates a situation where a lot of the people you see promoting their courses on YouTube will be poor people, pretending to be rich people, pretending to be poor people. Billionaires and get-rich-quick course salesmen presenting a different image of themselves to the world than who they really are behind closed doors probably won't surprise most of you. But there are 2 ways this lie is hurting the personal finances of regular people. The first way is simply the financial harm that buying into the trope of the relatable millionaire or billionaire can do to people who follow them blindly. Successful people telling regular people to cut down on luxuries to improve their financial situation is fine. But if they are telling them to cut down on luxuries to take on a side hustle so they can spend their money on a course instead, that's obviously bad. And it tragically happens all the time. It's easier for people with something to sell to ask people to cut down on discretionary spending if they have already built up a personal brand around driving a cheap car and living in a tiny house even after they become a millionaire. Being a frugal millionaire is also easier to fake if the supposed millionaires ever get questioned about the legitimacy of their own success. Obviously, grifters building an image so that they can sell a bad investment or overpriced course are going to do serious financial damage to the people they rope into their schemes. But even the billionaires paying their PR teams to get them positive media coverage about how relatable they are still doing damage to a lot of people's personal finances, because they are reinforcing a common trope in personal finance that everybody's financial problems are caused by them spending too much. The lies that very wealthy people tell about their humble cars, basic homes, and average lifestyle makes it easy to guilt people for enjoying little luxuries, because if Warren Buffett drives an old car, why do you need a new one? This does not excuse the reckless spending that a lot of Americans are guilty of, but it does take the attention away from their income. After a certain point, people can't improve their personal financial situation by being more frugal. They need to increase their income. And that's the third reason that billionaires spend too much money on looking poor. It helps them keep their workers in line. The accounting firm Ernst & Young, in a report, estimated that the number of family offices in the world had doubled between 2001 and 2016. Family offices are investment firms dedicated exclusively to managing the wealth of a single family. Where you and I have some shares on Robinhood or Schwab, the ultra-rich keep their money in family offices. An article by Barrage reported that one of the fastest growing expenses for these firms was public relations. Many of these family offices are so big that they now have as much influence as private equity firms, and with influence comes scrutiny. Private equity firms are some of the most hated financial institutions because they have a long history of bankrupting beloved companies and laying off thousands of workers, all to try and turn a slightly better profit.
Right. That's exactly right. What we've seen, in industry after industry where private equity buys up businesses is that they're really responsible for some of the worst, most abusive business practices in the country.
The scrutiny has been very bad for private equity, but the anger is only directed towards the managing partners of these companies. When a family office does the same thing, public outrage over job cuts would be blamed on the family, and that's where a good PR team is employed. It's easy for workers to demand better wages from a company owner who is photographed lounging on a super yacht. It's easier for a company owner to push back against worker demands when all of their public profile is about how they try to save every cent they can in the name of their business. The author of the article concluded that corporations became people, as people too became corporations. And while the number of corporations has actually been falling, the number of billionaires has been rising. But there are actually far more billionaires in the world than most people know. According to Forbes, America has 735 billionaires worth a combined $4.5 trillion. But how many billionaires are there really? When Forbes publishes their list, they add a small qualifier that almost nobody notices. There are 735 listed billionaires in America, because nobody knows how many there really are. Forbes employs more than 50 employees in 16 countries to compile their list. According to their methodology article, they use public financial records, interviews with employees, rivals, attorneys, and they attempt to validate the numbers by contacting the billionaires directly. Some cooperate and give Forbes access to their personal finances so they can report a more accurate number, but the magazine admits that most don't.
But on the other hand, these billionaires often don't want you to look under the hood, and they're constantly finding clever ways and different ways to shelter their money, move it around, try to hide it, or just coming up with just new tax strategies.
Much of the list is an estimated guess, but there are also a lot of billionaires out there that will never show up on the list even though they should.
The list is really a list of individual billionaires rather than, widespread family fortunes. And the same thing for people asking about Vladimir Putin or things like that. It's hard to break out where money is so intermingled with the government. One
group are the crony government leaders using their country's central bank as their own personal credit card. But I think there is another group that is even more interesting than that. Forbes and Bloomberg, who both get a lot of online attention from their billionaires list, have behind closed doors admitted that they have no way of keeping track of the most common type of American billionaire. In an interview with the New York Times, Kiri Dolan, the editor who oversees the Forbes team responsible for the annual list, gave a profile of a billionaire that they would never be able to find. She told The Times that it's someone who quietly sold a stake in a business for, say, $250 million in the 90s and then invested it well. That's it. That's all there is to it. $250 million is a big exit, especially back in the 90s, but it wouldn't have made the news unless it was a well-known household brand. Most good businesses of this size are boring and only sell their products to other businesses. As a former investment banker who has worked on a lot of these deals personally, I can tell you that $250 million exits happen every day, and sometimes it's not even the founders who are walking away with all of the money. Silent early investors in a private company would only show up on the paperwork in the part that tells the acquirer where to send the money. If a person took all of their earnings from a sale in 1999 at the height of the dot-com bubble and put all of it into the market and then spent a meager $1.2 million a year or $100,000 a month on themselves, they would now be worth $3.3 billion, and nobody would know unless they wanted them to. There are flashy individuals that want to show off their wealth, and there are billionaires that couldn't avoid attention because the companies they founded are too well known. But most billionaires are invisible to everybody but their close family, their accountant, and the IRS. There are 3 very important reasons why these billionaires do this, and 2 fascinating strategies they use to make sure they stay under the radar. The first reason that most billionaires try very hard to stay off the Forbes list is because of the problems that come with public notoriety. Lottery winners are routinely harassed by people begging for money, filing frivolous lawsuits, and family members pitching them a business idea over Thanksgiving dinner. The average lottery winner is 7 times more likely to declare bankruptcy than the average American, and the public attention they get is a big reason why. Not only is getting chased for your money annoying and costly, it can be dangerous. Known wealthy people are the logical targets of kidnappings, burglaries, and blackmail. High-profile business leaders and celebrities employ personal security, but it's difficult for these teams to always cover all their family members. Personal security is also expensive and inconvenient, because they need to travel, work, and live with you to remain effective. A nice relaxing life enjoying your riches can quickly turn into another job of managing a security team.
Executive protection agents serving Bollywood's biggest stars can earn more than $300,000 a year.
If nobody knows who you are or what you have in your Schwab account, then all of these problems can be avoided, and that's just the first reason. The second reason that most billionaires try very hard to avoid being included on the Forbes list is because they don't want to be seen alongside the same people that normally get included in the magazine. A lot of people that get articles written about them in Forbes paid for the privilege. Magazine subscriptions are down, and selling online ads doesn't make nearly as much money as selling physical copies did back when it was the most popular way to read these publications. Magazines like Forbes have had to look for alternative revenue sources, and doing paid articles is a lucrative option. People with C-suite career ambitions will get their PR manager to pay the magazine a few $1,000s to write a fluff piece about how they reshaped corporate culture at their last company. For a few $1,000s more, they can be included on a list like the Forbes 30 Under 30. Most of these lists are comprised of people that paid to be there, with a few big names like Sam Bankman-Fried and Martin Shkreli smattered in to give the list some credibility.
It was once an honor to be among Forbes' annual selection of 30 innovative business people under 30 years old. But in recent years, more and more individuals who have appeared on the list have ended up behind bars.
Forbes reports on a lot of people that want attention because they are the easiest people to report on. Business people normally only want attention if it serves them in some way. Linking a Forbes article on your resume and LinkedIn profile could be a good career move and worth the few $1,000s it costs. But for people who are already rich, it looks like they are desperate for attention. There is no way to tell who was written about in Forbes on their own merit, who was written about unwillingly, and who was written about because they paid for it. Established billionaires don't want people to assume it's the latter, so they just avoid media attention altogether. The other group of people that pay magazines like Forbes to write about them are scammers that make their money by selling online courses or cryptocurrency projects. If you watch some of their ads, you will see that they brag about being featured in Forbes or Money magazine, which gives them a lot of credibility, and they can win over some skeptical customers. Most people will think that magazines like this wouldn't play any part in promoting a scam, but they would.
Could it be that the Forbes 30 Under 30 list really just attracts entrepreneurs who really don't have a legitimate business just to land on their list for social proof?
The business people that billionaires work with every day know about this paid publicity, so for them showing up in Forbes is a mark against someone's business case. The third reason that most billionaires avoid publications like Forbes is plain old selection bias. The people getting featured in Forbes magazine are usually at the height of their careers or business success. After that, there is a long way to fall and not a long way left to go up. The people that are heads of major companies or members of high-profile families can't avoid it, but anybody that seeks out attention knows the risks, and does it anyway because they like the attention. People with these character traits will long-term be less likely to manage their wealth and their business effectively. They will be more likely to take large risks and be overly assured in their own business skills. People like Kevin O'Leary would be a lot wealthier today if they had just invested their early career winnings into the market and then did nothing else. Someone's financial success becoming public information can also turn a lot of their customers off their brand. People like to support small family businesses over soulless corporations, but if they find out that the owners are already billionaires, their customers' loyalty will not be as strong. On the expense side, a known billionaire will also be offered more expensive options anywhere they go. They will get overquoted by contractors and get judged for negotiating discounts. There are very few benefits of having one's wealth publicly known, and there are a lot of problems it causes. Smart billionaires understand this, and smart billionaires are more likely to stay billionaires. So you have just become a billionaire and you want to stay completely anonymous. Excellent. I have clearly taught you how money works, so here is what you are going to need to do. If your money is coming out of the sale of a business, make sure it is a private sale. These days, launching your company onto public markets through an IPO is only really necessary if you are going to be the next Facebook or Amazon. And if your company is that big, sorry, it's already too late for you. A private equity exit or acquisition from a bigger company is quieter and easier to in most cases. In terms of the deal, don't have to be public record in the press release, so there is nothing for the journalists at Forbes to dig up. Once you have secured the bag, you should then invest it broadly in the market and avoid putting too much money into any one company. If you own 5% or more of any public company, you must file what is known as a Form 13D with the SEC. 13Ds are public for anybody to see because the SEC wants investors to be aware of who the biggest shareholders are in a public company. If someone with more than 5% of the company's shares needed to sell quickly, they would push down the stock's price significantly. Investors should pay close attention to who a company's top shareholders are, because if it's the people that will be in a bad financial situation personally, it will be bad for the stock price even if the business fundamentals are good. As a billionaire that values their privacy, you would be best served to limiting any individual investments to no more than 4.99% of the company's shares. This has the additional benefit of making sure you are diversified as well. Another way the SEC can snitch on you to Forbes magazine is through a Form 3. This must be filed if you own more than 10% of a public company, or if you are a company officer like a CEO, CFO, or chief legal counsel. A Form 3 also needs to be filed if you are a company director, so if you want to stay hidden, don't take too many of these positions. You can have $1 billion portfolio, and only the holdings you have in the companies you are a director of will be public. So if you want to sit on a few boards, you can, but it will put your name out there. The other way that your wealth becomes public knowledge is through lawsuit discovery. If you get sued, anything that gets turned up by the lawyers is entered into public record, except for in the rare circumstances that evidence gets sealed. The best way to avoid lawsuits is to avoid attention. So as a new billionaire that's trying to stay out of the public eye, you are already doing everything right. Billionaires will also take advantage of holding companies and trusts set up in states that have strong asset protection and privacy laws like Nevada and North Dakota. If you live outside of America, you should consult my video on the Panama Papers to find out how the global billionaires get it done. Once you have the accounting set up, the next step is to just avoid the ostentatious displays of wealth. You can still live in a beautiful home, just make sure it's in a private area and that it's not the most expensive in the area. You can still drive a nice car, but don't post about it all over social media. You can still fly private, but don't put a logo or name down the side of your plane. Your best defense is being too boring to write about and for your actual wealth to be too difficult to verify. If you ever get a call from any of these publications, just laugh quietly and tell them that you wish you were worth $1 billion and that you would prefer that they didn't imply that you were, because that would be materially inaccurate. If they have no way to definitely verify your wealth, they won't risk adding you. Now, the first step in this is obviously becoming a billionaire, and I don't have the best answer for you there. Because, and I hate to be the one to tell you this, you really don't want to be one. I was watching the 1999 movie Office Space the other day, a comedy set at the peak of the 1990s corporate culture. It is one of my all-time favorite movies, but the more I watch it, the more I notice something. The core of this comedy is its cynical commentary on working a boring job at a boring company. But the more I watch it, the better the jobs of Peter and his coworkers look. Because it's a comedy, the writers took a lot of creative liberties to make Peter's working environment especially terrible. But even still, 20 years later, it doesn't look that bad. His office cubicle would be a luxury to most workers today in an open-plan office with no walls in sight. He is allowed to go on extended lunches with his colleagues, and even his over-dramatized shitty boss knows that working on a weekend is a big ask rather than an expectation. This made me think of the classic anecdote. Find a job you love, and you will never work a day in your life. Most of us go to work because we have to, not because we want to. And that means a lot of us are stuck spending a good portion of our waking hours doing things that aren't very enjoyable. A cunning strategy that school career planners and LinkedIn gurus will promote to get around this unfortunate predicament is to find a job that you love doing so that you are excited to go to work every day and you don't feel like you are working at all. On the surface, this sounds sensible. Now more than ever, with new technologies, there are millions of different job titles out there with new professions and career paths being made every single day. My job as a now full-time YouTuber didn't exist 15 years ago, but now it's the career that children want most, beating out traditionally popular options like astronaut. But I want to do what I do best, which is to rein in on this parade of finding fulfillment through your work. Instead, I want to try and convince you that what you want instead is a really boring job. A job that doesn't make you or anybody else excited, a job that nobody would dream of. There are lots of very attractive jobs out there that for a number of factors would appear to be preferable over other jobs. There is being a doctor, lawyer, or high-level corporate executive, which is enticing because these roles are traditionally very well paid and are very well respected by society at large. If you tell someone that you are a C-suite executive at a Fortune 500 company, you are instantly going to get more respect than if you told them that you work in retail. Is this how it should be? Of course not. But it is, and people are willing to sacrifice a lot for that respect. These roles come with the expectation of very long and irregular hours, to say nothing of the years of grueling study or corporate butt-kissing needed to get the jobs in the first place. Now, there's actually nothing wrong with these jobs. Most people know what they are getting themselves in for when they pursue these kinds of careers, and the trade-offs are clear. Most people do these jobs because of prestige, not because they love them. So what about jobs that people are more passionate about? The jobs that people would supposedly love to do? I am talking about jobs in the fields that people get excited about, like gaming, fashion, travel, and sports. Imagine getting paid to make video games or attend fashion events around the world. Sounds like a dream, right? Well, no. Big-name companies in aspirational industries are more often than not terrible places to work. The reason for this is simple. They know that people want to work for them, so if you as a worker aren't willing to put in unpaid overtime, deal with abusive management, and accept comparatively low pay, then there are dozens or sometimes even hundreds of equally qualified candidates who are willing to put up with these issues because they get to work what they thought would be their dream job. Turnover in these companies is extremely high, especially when it is considered that these businesses are attracting skilled career-driven workers, the type of worker that you might normally expect to stick around for longer than a regular employee. Now, of course, changing jobs regularly is actually a good idea. Employees that change companies on average every 2 years are paid significantly better than their peers who attempt to work for internal promotions, but you need to be quitting for the right reasons. Quitting your current job to start a new, more senior role at a company offering double your current salary is a great career move. Quitting your current job because you can't mentally handle another week of a coding crunch is probably going to stall your career development. Another reason it's best to avoid doing what you love for work is that you won't love it forever. Even the most exciting jobs you can imagine have a lot of boring work that comes with them. A video game tester will spend most of their time doing the same mission over and over again to make sure there are no bugs. And most people that work for NFL teams spend their days in an office answering emails just like everybody else. Even if a dream job does manage to live up to its hype initially, there is one surefire way to end up hating something you originally loved, and that is being forced to do it for 40 hours a week with the threat of homelessness hanging over you if you don't. Really, you are much better off working for money and then using that money to enjoy things you love in your own time in your own way. Hopefully, I have convinced you that exciting jobs are not all that they seem, but surely that doesn't mean that a boring job is the best alternative, right? Well, they have a few big perks that a lot of people don't really consider. A boring job at a boring company will on average be easier to get than the rare, more prized jobs at exciting companies. Having more options available to you, especially early in your career, can be a big head start over your peers who wait it out or go through extended internships to get a traditional dream job. Boring jobs will also on average pay better. Ford's median employee made $64,316 in 2018, including bonuses, overtime, and stock awards. GM's median employee made slightly more than $77,849. Tesla, a far more exciting business, paid its median employee just $56,163. This, of course, will not be true for every company, but again, if there are more people that want to work at a company, then generally that company can get away with paying their workers less. This is even more apparent when we zoom out to look at entire industries. On average, web developers will earn more than game developers. A marketing manager for Exxon will earn more than a marketing manager for the Patriots. And an administrative assistant at a bank will earn more than an administrative assistant at Vanity Fair. If you are doing a job to make money, you should maximize the amount of money you can get for doing that job. You won't see the name on the side of your building from your desk anyway. Now, if making money isn't the most important thing for you when considering a career, a boring job still has its perks. Boring jobs are just genuinely more enjoyable. A boring company is more likely to be filled with employees and managers who realize that a job is something people do to put food on the table. This type of corporate attitude tends to result in more productive workplace relationships. A manager at a generic boring company that has been in their job for decades and has no ambitions of moving up the corporate ladder is not going to take it personally when you ask for a raise, a promotion, or a reference letter. Contrast that with a company where the management has drunk the "we are changing the world" Kool-Aid, and you are much more likely to face opposition when doing these things that all employees should really be doing as regularly as possible. Time and time again, we hear stories about high staff turnover and toxic workplace culture in companies that sound exciting from the outside. This is because when managers believe what they are doing is more important than just working a job to make a living, they naturally expect their colleagues to work harder than should reasonably be expected to. Toxic workplace cultures are almost inevitable in environments where managers will think to themselves that straight-up verbal abuse is really just a heated disagreement amongst peers who are too passionate about what they do. These types of managers are also much more likely to go unchecked in exciting fields, because again, staff turnover is not a big deal when there is an endless line of new candidates. Now, before anybody says it in the comments, yes, you're absolutely right. There are great managers and there are terrible managers in every kind of company, but you are much more likely to run into one in a job that you thought was going to be exciting. And that's the biggest bonus of a boring job: better management on average. That boring company manager from earlier that has been at their job for a decade will have one big advantage over the manager from an exciting company with high staff turnover: they will have more experience at their job. Working for a manager that has seen every possible problem the job can throw at them is going to be a much more pleasant experience than working for a manager who is figuring it out as they go along. A more experienced manager also has less to prove. If they feel secure in their own position, then they won't feel the need to work their employees to the bone to avoid becoming one of those turnover statistics themselves. Last month, I made a video about why management is always terrible, and the reason that video was so important is because people don't quit jobs. They quit managers. Even the best, most exciting job in the world would quickly become unbearable with a useless manager that takes their shortcomings out on their workers. Working a boring job gives you a better chance of finding a good manager who will make your time at work not totally miserable, and also help to progress your career so that you can make more money and use that to enjoy the hobbies that other people were dumb enough to try and build a career around. I have a theory about why we all love movies like Office Space or TV shows like Parks and Rec and The Office so much. These shows all highlight the realities of a boring workplace to a comically ridiculous degree, but at the same time, they are also very comfortable places to work. The people stick around, and even the bad guy bosses are not abusive towards their employees. Maybe this is an indictment on how low the bar is for what we consider comfortable working arrangements in America. But I think it's something more. We turn to these kinds of shows for comfort binge watching. We wouldn't do that if we didn't secretly think that maybe working alongside these people in these boring offices wouldn't be such a bad thing. And you'd be right, because honestly, working for some visionary who's going to change the world and bring you along for the ride while paying you truckloads of cash isn't all that it's cracked up to be.
After what we've seen over the past few months, I think we finally need to admit, once and for all, that these people are idiots.
I screwed up. I was CEO. I had a responsibility. That means that I was responsible ultimately.
We did not catch and fix these issues faster.
Are you sincerely trying to save the world?
Well, I'm trying to do good things, yeah.
Definitely not worried about getting sued, but I'm worried about doing something for my own benefit.
I read one, but I know you can't talk about it.
I don't know which Nazi.
I regret for every single person that had to go through that. It was not my intention, not what they signed up for.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
The FTX bankruptcy has shed light on a lot of bad business and investing practices both within the company and outside of it. One of the biggest issues that now seems funny in hindsight was the undue attention placed on the business's founder and CEO Sam Bankman-Fried, or SBF as he is better known amongst recently bankrupt crypto bros. In the lead up to its eventual collapse, SBF arguably got more attention than the multi-billion-dollar business he ran. Unsophisticated financial commentators all the way up to the world's largest venture capital firms were captivated by the fact that he wore the same sneakers as their grandparents and drove a Toyota Corolla. As the FTX story unfolds, allegations are now coming into light that this geeky persona was little more than a carefully curated image, and that Bankman-Fried would go as far as to intentionally act erratic with outside investors because it furthered his image as some kind of misunderstood visionary genius. But what was, for some reason, a big selling point for SBF and his doomed companies should really be a cautionary tale for all of us. Visionaries do not make good CEOs, and to take it a step further, good CEOs should not be visionaries. It's easy to throw stones at the rubble of a bankrupt company like FTX, but celebrity CEOs have become a genuine problem that might be costing us all a lot of money, even if we don't directly invest into their companies. When we are talking about visionary CEOs whose personal image is inseparably linked with their companies, it's hard to look much further than Elon Musk. Musk is obviously a talented guy, and his mere mention of a company or a cryptocurrency can send valuations skyrocketing. But that's not a power you want your CEO to have. Investors in Musk's ventures have mostly done well for themselves up until this point, but that trend is starting to reverse. Tesla's stock price is down over 50% from its peak, which means a lot of investors in the company are now holding onto positions where they have lost money. His drawn-out acquisition of Twitter has not been going well, to say the least. By almost every educated estimate, he significantly overpaid for the platform, because the alternative was going to prison for stock manipulation. Musk used his significant stake in Tesla as collateral for the loans he needed to take out to close the $44 billion deal, which has now put downward pressure on the electric car company that had no direct involvement in Twitter outside of sharing the same visionary CEO. People find it much easier to get behind the idea of a charismatic person than they do to get behind the ideas of a big corporation, and this can be great for building hype around a company. But then for better or worse, that company becomes linked to that person's decisions. Individuals who have only been told how smart they are for decades on end are prone to making more erratic decisions than boring structured corporate management. The problem for investors is that by the time a CEO like Musk has crafted themselves a public image as a visionary, the stocks they represent are already overvalued, and any dumb decisions they make going forward will represent outsized downside risk to that position. If a business sells itself on having a visionary CEO, any investor in that business is putting their money behind a person as much as they are a business, and people are much less predictable than well-regulated companies. Musk's ongoing Twitter saga and some bad PR moves in the past have hurt investors in his companies, but he is a saint compared to a lot of other touted visionary CEOs. Outright fraudulent companies like FTX, Theranos, and companies really cutting close to the line like WeWork would not have been possible without charismatic figureheads distracting investors from the fact that their business makes no sense. Startup founders do need to occasionally be their own hype men to attract early investors and customers, but there is a big difference between talking about what a business can bring to a market and talking about a personal vision for changing the world. Even if businesses do not start off with fraudulent intentions, admitting failure early on is going to be much easier for a manager to do if they have not aligned their personal identity with the success of their business. There is no way of knowing for sure, but Elizabeth Holmes probably didn't set out to start a vehicle for investment fraud. She started out to build a medical technology company. When her technology didn't work, the right thing to do would have been to admit the failing and either shut down the company or try to raise more money to continue research and development. But failures and setbacks are not what you would expect of a visionary CEO like Holmes, so she took a different route that destroyed billions of dollars and landed her in prison for 11 years.
Sentencing Elizabeth Holmes of Theranos to more than a decade in prison. Remember, of course, Holmes was convicted about some business dealings related to this failed blood testing startup.
An exciting company with boring management is going to do much better long-term than a boring company with managers that are celebrities in their own right. The explosion in the number of visionary CEOs in the past 20 years is no accident. Today, CEOs of large companies will personally hire public relations consultants to polish their personal image in the media. Corporate ladder climbing CEOs try not to attract too much attention. They mostly want to make sure that a cursory Googling of their name won't say anything that could affect their chances of landing another 8-figure role. But company founders will often take this a step further. People like Holmes, Newman, Bankman-Fried, and Musk work carefully to curate an image of themselves as a genius who was simply destined for success. A fine-tuning of their public image goes beyond framing them as misunderstood geniuses as well. Bezos, Holmes, Zuckerberg, Newman, Buffett, the Waltons, and most recently, of course, SBF himself have all had articles written about the cheap cars they use to drive. PR consultants will grant access to media outlets that are willing to report on these cars because it furthers their image as a frugal, pragmatic business owner who is more interested in changing the world than they are in surrounding themselves with luxury. These same articles conveniently exclude details like the fact that Bezos has 2 private jets, a dozen homes around the country, and a very expensive toy rocket hobby, and Zuckerberg owns an entire Hawaiian island. Buffett, the king of the humble persona, also owns a private jet and mostly gets driven around in a fleet of Suburbans, and Bankman-Fried may have very well driven a Corolla, but he also used hundreds of millions of dollars worth of investors' money to buy up luxury real estate all over the Bahamas for the enjoyment of himself and his fellow FTX executives. The problem this creates for businesses is that it becomes very hard to pivot away from the ideas that aren't working because it can hurt the personal brand of the visionary CEO. Whereas if the company was being led by a generic corporate suit, it is far less damaging for them to change course or simply be replaced. The biggest problem today with so-called visionary CEOs is that they normally hurt the everyday functions of the business and can ironically actually reduce how innovative the company is.
You talking to me?
A report by the Harvard Business Review titled "Why Visionary Leadership Fails" looked at 136 managers across various levels of the corporate hierarchy. They found that managers that could be identified as visionaries often micromanaged their staff, were prone to being overly fixated on irrelevant details, and quashed the free flow of ideas amongst their peers and subordinates. Visionary leadership was also found to create a culture of despondency in the workplace amongst workers who weren't fully aligned with their visionary CEO's vision. If workers can't contribute their own ideas towards a project, they are unlikely to put in any more effort than the bare minimum to qualify for a promotion or to simply avoid termination. Visionary managers were also shown to create this culture for all levels of management underneath them. If a middle manager has a personal vision for how something should be done and won't accept anything different, then the managers beneath them won't be engaged, and neither will the managers beneath them, and so on down to the bottom of the corporate ladder. If that visionary leader happens to have the very top job, then it can create this culture for the entire company. A lot of companies run by visionary leaders have been famously terrible places to work. Tesla and SpaceX have very high staff turnover rates compared to their industry average. Emerging stories from inside FTX are not painting a good picture, and even Apple during its era of Steve Jobs was a famously unpleasant place to work.
My camera's not turning on. What's that? I did slide it and let go. It's not turning on. Here. Okay. We'll let an expert see if he can turn it on.
A CEO's job is to decide on strategic directions for a company and put the right process in place to make sure the company stays on track to achieve those results. It sounds like an easy job, but it is hard and time-consuming, and frankly, quite boring. It's much more fun to roleplay Tony Stark and get directly involved in the development of whatever is going to make the next week's headlines. Companies grow by attracting and utilizing talent. Even if a visionary CEO is legitimately brilliant, they are never going to be as creative or solve big problems as effectively as a good team of qualified and motivated staff. But if visionaries really do make terrible corporate leaders, then why are there so many of them? Well, the Harvard Business Review presents a compelling answer to this question too, which is that most people that see themselves and want themselves to be seen as visionaries are more likely to start companies and have the right personality to seek early-stage capital. Pure sample bias means if more people in this group of people try to start a business, more of them will be successful enough to become household names, even if they have a lower starting chance of becoming successful, as compared to a founder who just wants to build a solid business in an area where they see a good opportunity. Now, the final mistake of visionary CEOs is that since their personal reputation relies so heavily on the success of their company, they find it impossible to scale back operations, even if it is in the best interest of their stakeholders. And, quite frankly, it might be inevitable that we get some incredibly irresponsible people at the top just based on how many there are in the broader population. If everybody was financially responsible, there would be nobody left to spend money on disposable consumer junk, overpriced restaurant meals, lease pickups, and day trading courses, but all of these purchases give other people a job. If you are being financially responsible, are you denying an opportunity to somebody else to be financially responsible? And does that mean that you should be grateful to all of the people living paycheck to paycheck? The average American is not in a comfortable financial position at the moment, and it's the same story everywhere around the world. Money that people saved in the pandemic has evaporated, and credit card debt has taken its place. But how much of this is reckless? And how much of this is what people who do not make enough money do to keep up? People are being financially irresponsible, but they are also being financially f***ed, and those are not mutually exclusive. If you think of someone who is financially responsible, or you want to be financially responsible yourself, there are a few things you are going to need. An emergency fund and retirement savings are a must. Most financial advice also recommends that you have a car paid for in cash. Oh, and by the time you're 30, you should have a house that you put a 20% down payment on. The things that make people financially responsible are really expensive, and a lot of people simply can't afford them. It's easy to think to yourself that everybody in financial distress is doing something dumb. But the reality is that no matter how thrifty a lot of Americans get, they will struggle to even save up an emergency fund, let alone everything else that qualifies someone as financially responsible. People saved a lot of money during the pandemic because of government stimulus, paused student loans, and because spending money was hard. People were saving for the things that would make them financially secure. In a 2021 survey conducted on 1,037 Americans by Go Bank Rates, a financial market data firm, 44% said that they were saving for an emergency fund, 19% said that they were saving for retirement, and 13% said that they were saving for a home, which was roughly half of the respondents that didn't already own a home. In 2023, according to a follow-up report by Bloomberg and data from the Fed, all of the money that people were wishfully putting towards being financially responsible is gone.
What? It's gone. It's all gone.
According to the report, only the top 20% of Americans still have any excess savings. With disheartening figures like this, people are more likely to give up on slow and steady financial responsibility and look for opportunities that could change their life overnight, like lotteries, get-rich-quick schemes, and risky investments. It has a low chance of success, but many Americans now think that they have no chance of success by doing it the slow and steady way, so they make these financial mistakes. People tried financial responsibility during the best years ever for saving money, and it evaporated just months later. Being poor is also really expensive. Poorer areas don't attract big stores, so people who live there either have to drive up for an hour round trip to get food or use convenience stores for groceries, which could charge a significant markup over big box retailers like Walmart, Trader Joe's, or Costco. Food deserts are just the first way that poor people stay poor. But what about the people who could do better? There are people who just don't have enough income left over after essentials to buy the increasingly expensive essentials to be financially responsible. But there are also a lot of people who do have the means to be financially responsible and just make dumb decisions. Otherwise, Dave Ramsey would have nobody to yell at on his show.
It's our choice, Your choice is don't be stupid. That's your choice.
Well, there are actually 3 reasons why it's in your best interest for these people to get their shit together, and one big reason why you might not want them to. The reason that you don't want everybody else to be financially responsible is that it would make investing for your own financial goals more difficult. More money entering the stock market would push up prices, which is great if you already own all the stocks you ever want to purchase. But it's bad if you are planning on consistently investing over your career like financially responsible people do. A more expensive stock price does not affect the business fundamentals or performance of a company. So as a financially responsible investor, you should actually prefer that prices stay low. Warren Buffett is a legendary investor that people follow because of his long track record of finding undervalued companies to invest in. When Buffett buys a stock through Berkshire Hathaway, he needs to disclose his position to investors. When Buffett announces a new purchase, the market rallies behind him instantly, putting him in a profitable position on his purchase. That sounds like a perk of being one of the most legendary investors of all time. But Buffett has said in shareholder meetings that he hates when this happens because it makes a good stock more expensive to buy into if he wants to purchase more of a company in the future. Obviously, you are not Warren Buffett, but if everybody became financially responsible, you would share the same problem. If more people were buying the same shares that you wanted to buy to fund a long-term goal like retirement, then you will end up paying more for the same portfolio. The only time that you actually want a stock's price to be high is when you want to sell it. Currently, if everybody became savers and investors, the people that would stand to gain the most are wealthy people who already have large holdings of assets to sell to people entering the market for the first time. The same thing would happen for other financially responsible purchases like a house. If people gave up vacations, fancy dinners, and expensive cars to save diligently for a house, they would become even more expensive, making it harder for you to buy one, thus making it harder for you to be financially responsible. Additionally, investments like stocks and real estate only have value because they make something to sell to people. So if everybody decides that their 2-year-old iPhone is good enough and they don't need to upgrade, that would hurt the earnings of Apple as a company and you as a shareholder. So you might be thinking that maybe it's a good thing that so many people make so many dumb financial decisions. It's easier to get ahead if everybody else is tripping over themselves. But then there are 3 reasons why, despite the extra competition, you should still want people to be more financially responsible. The first reason is that people being better with their money would be better for everyone. People are afraid of a future where they will own nothing and be happy about it. The growth of subscription services, where people pay monthly for entertainment, applications, cars, food, housing, and everything in between, has grown in popularity in part because people no longer have the means or discipline to save up to make a one-time upfront purchase. Companies have capitalized on this to build a recurring revenue model where people pay a monthly fee for everything that works out to be a much worse deal on a time value adjusted basis. According to the Subscription Economy Index report, the market for subscription services has grown by 435% over the last decade. It is expected to grow even more by reaching a market size of $1.5 trillion by 2025. According to the market research and consulting firm Forrester, the #1 reason that subscription services have become so popular with consumers is exactly what you would expect. People don't have enough money to pay for things up front anymore. Now, subscription services are not bad by themselves. Sometimes it's a great way to try a product without committing to a single upfront purchase. And it has other advantages like forcing companies to push through updates on their services so they don't lose their recurring revenue. What is bad is when there is no other option that is not a subscription. There are now some things that are hard to buy without paying a monthly subscription. This very video was made using the Adobe Suite, which is no longer available for upfront purchase and can only be used on a subscription. Even if you want to buy something like a car, dealerships are going to make more money by putting you on a lease than they would by selling you a car in all cash, so they have structured their businesses to push those deals. Bullshit like this is only possible because there are enough people that buy these services that businesses have been able to transition to them, and in many cases, completely discontinue their upfront sales offerings. The second reason you should want everybody to be as financially responsible as possible is for exactly the opposite reason: an even scarier future where you own everything and are miserable. Poor financial planning and overconsumption go hand in hand. According to data from the EPA, the average American uses more than their body weight in consumable products every day. Reckless spending has financed big cars, big houses, big meals, and big convenience that all comes at a financial cost, but is also an environmental cost. Even if you don't personally care about the environmental impact, this benefit is still important to you. If people buy less of everything and are more conscious of where they spend their money, then there will be more stuff left over for you. Less consumption will also reduce how much we collectively pay in environmental taxes, which will make it even easier to be financially responsible. And that's the third reason why we can afford for everybody to be financially responsible, and would be better off if they were. Some companies need people to spend their money recklessly to stay in business. Fast fashion, consumer lenders, automakers, debt collectors, hotels, airlines, and restaurants all do well from people YOLOing their paycheck away or signing up for irresponsible amounts of debt. But other companies like groceries, healthcare, and repairs won't be as affected. Some companies would actually do better, as people have more money to make investment purchases into things that are expensive upfront but pay themselves off over time, like new homes, solar panels, and high-quality, long-lasting clothes. If you save money, you will eventually spend it on something. And long-term purchases are generally better for everyone than easy consumables. More responsible spending done by everybody with the intention of being financially secure will also mean services like Social Security will have more to give to people in need. The bonus fourth reason is that if people are spending less of their money on useless junk, then we won't need to work as hard to make that useless junk. Today, the average American is not working as many hours as they used to 100 years ago, but we still haven't got our work-life balance perfected.